Hello and welcome back to the Sidetracked Sport Podcast. I'm your host Jasmine, and in today's episode we're going to be talking about athletes who have dual nationalities or dual citizenships and can move from representing one nation to another within their sporting career. And so, of course, for this topic, I wanted an athlete who has done just that to join me. And so joining me today is Danusia Francis, an Olympic gymnast who represented both Great Britain and Jamaica at the international stage during her career. And now, since retiring, she does a bit more broadcasting and works in commentating, presenting, and even some stunt work, which I think is really, really cool. So, Danusia, hi. Do you want to just tell us how you're doing?
Hi Jasmine, I'm really good, thank you. I'm excited to be on your podcast. It's a fun topic to talk about. I'm really proud of myself having represented both Great Britain and Jamaica, as you mentioned, and yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into it with you.
So I think a good place to start will be if you could tell us a little bit about your heritage on both parents' side, because you've got quite an interesting background, really.
Yeah, so my mum's side is Polish, so both my grandparents were refugees and came over during World War II, and then on my dad's side, his whole family's Jamaican, so I was born and raised in Great Britain, but actually I'm half Polish and half Jamaican.
And I guess what was that like for you growing up having two different cultures, just completely separate from sport? What was that like?
Well, my parents weren't together, so I grew up with my mum, and we celebrated Polish Christmas and were excited to kind of have dip our toes into the Polish culture. But then with the Jamaican side, not having a great relationship with my dad, it was always actually the Olympic Games that made me feel so proud to be Polish. So sorry, to be Jamaican. So seeing the athletes and then particularly Usain Bolt and just the character and the energy that they would always bring to the Olympics. It's such a small country but so well known for their amazing sporting history, so I was always really, really proud to be Jamaican during that time. And then it was kind of my upbringing around my grandparents and being proud of their history that has always made me proud to be Polish.
And do you want to tell me as well a little bit about your, I believe it's great grandparents or grandparents, and sort of their Polish sort of history, because it's, as people might maybe guess their age and the timing and where they're from, it's quite an interesting history.
Yeah, so my great grandma, she was actually in Auschwitz and she survived, which is absolutely incredible. I think I was either 1 year old when she passed away, so I never sort of got to know her. But it's just unbelievable to know that somebody in my family and not that far removed, it's not like generations and generations ago, was a survivor of Auschwitz and all the horrors that went on there. And it just is something that inspires me when I'm going through hardship to think back, if she survived that, and obviously what we're going through is probably nothing in comparison. And then both of my grandparents were refugees, so my granddad, his uncle, his dad, his granddad all got killed by the Nazis, and then he was taken to the other side of Poland with his grandma, and then his mum eventually, I think he was on the radio when he was like around 8 years old, it might have been a little bit older, and was kind of saying, I'm looking for my mum. This was obviously sort of at the end of the war. And she happened to hear this on the radio, travelled across Poland to find him again, and then travelled across Europe to make it to the UK. And then my grandma was even younger at the time, so a really young child, and she was speaking Polish, so they assumed she was Polish. And she said she had a pet pig with her, and that was kind of like it. And then she got adopted. And her adoptive father was actually in MI6, so they both have incredible stories and histories, and there's just some, yeah, just really amazing characters in my family.
Wow, that's incredible. What a history. That's wow. I can't even believe that. It doesn't, you almost don't think it sounds real. It's that incredible that they both had such an amazing journey. And I guess, yeah, here we are now. And sort of then going to looking at you as a young gymnast growing up in Britain, was it always a dream and a hope to, I imagine, go to the Olympics and represent a country, at least on the international stage? But was it always Great Britain for you when you were younger, or did you ever think about Jamaica or Poland?
So growing up obviously in the British system, that was just the natural progression of things, was to represent Great Britain, and yeah, I was always a part of that system from sort of 9 years old. So yeah, it was a natural progression to then want to represent Great Britain at the Olympics. And gymnastics is such a young sport, but now it is starting to progress where you are seeing gymnasts continue later on into adulthood. But at that time it was kind of like one Olympics max and then you're done. One Olympic cycle. There was a few kind of outliers, but they were considered special cases. But for everyone else, it was like you've got this one shot at an Olympic cycle and that's it. So for me, that was 2012. I was going to be 18, and growing up through the sport, I was like, that's perfect. Gives me a couple of years of eligibility as a senior to get used to it, and then also it's a great age to then retire, I thought, and sort of start my life, whether that was going off to university or whatever that was going to look like at the time. So yeah, that was kind of the plan. And then I ended up as reserve for the 2012 Olympics, so a really incredible achievement now when I look back, but at the time obviously quite heartbreaking to come that close. And growing up in Britain, I think we kind of joke sometimes like, oh, we should just go and represent Jamaica, because there was quite a few of us on the British team that were actually half Jamaican, but it was never actually something that I properly considered until later on.
That's an interesting point that you sort of would joke around with some teammates and you'd be like, oh, we should just go represent Jamaica. And then, like, late years down the line, you've gone and done that. You kind of just stuck to your word, I guess. um, and so then you said about as a teenager, you represented Great Britain. You sort of expected you turn 18, retire, maybe go to university, do something else, and I guess have a non-athlete career of some sort. But you went to college in America instead, had a really cool NCAA career. And at what point within that career or where in that sort of timeline was it you went, oh, actually, maybe I really should represent Jamaica or maybe Poland as well?
So going to UCLA was amazing for me. It really made me fall in love with the sport again. It was a completely different outlook on it. It was very team orientated, all about the performance and sort of standing out, and the style of gymnastics really suited me, and I was just really enjoying it again. And I kind of thought, actually, I think I could compete internationally again, and thought of my options, obviously Great Britain being the first option, but they're so competitive, which is amazing, but it just wasn't going to be feasible travelling from LA to Great Britain to participate in all the trials and squads that are compulsory to stay on the team. So I was thinking, what are my other options? Obviously Poland, they have an established programme over there, but my Polish isn't that great. I'm on about a million day streak on Duolingo, but still not fluent. So I wasn't sure about Poland, but I also considered it because I did want to make my Polish family proud. But then Jamaica really was just calling out to me, and kind of, like I mentioned, the vibe of Usain Bolt and the other athletes and the personality that they bring to sport. I definitely felt like I would fit into that mould. So I had a look into it and saw that there was a couple of gymnasts that just sort of started out competing for them. So I reached out to them and sort of got the ball rolling, and that would have been, what year? 2015. So yeah, 2015. I think I might have started the process a little bit before that, but yeah, 2015 was when I first competed for Jamaica.
Wow, it's quite a quick progression really. From 2012, you thought, right, okay, I'm gonna retire around sort of now, to going, oh, actually, I think I can go a little bit further and switching to represent a different nation. And I guess what was that sort of process like? I can imagine there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of admin you have to do, but what was it like that side, but also for you personally as well?
So initially it was paperwork, like you say, getting the passport side of things sorted, and a lot of that had to be done in the UK. So that was my mum and my brother was helping, and yeah, so they got that sorted, which was really helpful. And then I think I ended up going to Washington as well to just finish that process. And then on the kind of emotional side of things, originally I was like, okay, I haven't competed internationally in a while. I'll aim for Commonwealth Games, as that's a more friendly one, and it's not quite as big as your World Championships or your Olympics, as you've got obviously just the Commonwealth countries. But for whatever reason that didn't work out. None of the Jamaican gymnasts ended up doing the Commonwealth Games that year. And then obviously we'd gone through all this trouble to get the passport and get the citizenship, and we also had to get sign off from Great Britain, which was pretty easy. They were very supportive. But I wasn't kind of ready in my head to go straight to a World Championships, but that was the next opportunity. and it was 2015, so that was also the World Championship to qualify for the Olympics. And again, I hadn't been sort of looking long term when it came to competing for Jamaica. At the time, I was like, let's go for Commonwealth, and I was just going to see what happened from there. But then obviously it happened to be World Championships and Olympic qualifier, so yeah, went for that one. And it was in Glasgow, which was good because I got to come back to the UK and compete in Glasgow. And it was a really fun World Championships, and I did end up doing really well. So yeah, it all worked out quite good, even though it was a lot to compete for Jamaica for the first time at the World Championships.
And I guess, was it a stressful process at all, going from representing Great Britain to Jamaica? Was there ever any, I guess, maybe doubts in your mind of, oh, is it worth it or am I doing the right thing?
I think the stressful parts were kind of it being a very young and new governing body, so there's just not the infrastructure, there's not the rules, there's not the procedures in place. So it's just kind of like figuring that out and figuring out the personalities that go along with that. I think the best part of it was being an adult, so really being able to make my own decisions when it came to training and routines and figuring that out along with my coaches. Whereas in Great Britain, it's with all those rules, there also comes a lot of you have to do this and you have to be here, you have to do these trainings and these competitions. So that was quite nice, and I think the timing in terms of being a university student and an adult to then have less of that structure was actually very good for me at that time in my life.
Yeah, that's a point I hadn't even thought about, that in Great Britain, because it's such a well-established program of you do this step, then this one, and eventually you'll make it to this place. And I guess, yeah, Jamaica didn't quite have that yet. And so you did almost have more flexibility to mold it to whatever suited you in a weird way as well, which probably worked out better for you at the time. And I guess also, you mentioned that the British Federation were really supportive, but were there any moments that you received any criticism from anyone in either Britain or Jamaica or anywhere that maybe sort of not necessarily affected you, but you sort of saw and were sort of, oh, okay, strange, or
So the British Federation, as you said, they were very supportive, and that was easy. They didn't make it difficult at all, and they were very welcoming of me competing as a guest at English Championships and British Championships all the way through the rest of my career, which was great. The only kind of criticism that I got was, the trolls online. So luckily for me, not too many of them. But yeah, I think it was before I kind of established myself and showed what I could do as a gymnast representing Jamaica. They kind of, yeah, people assume that you've just switched nationalities because you're not good enough for your previous one. So yeah, there was definitely the odd comment, and luckily for me, not many at all, but they always stick in your mind, don't they? You can get 100 positive ones, and the one negative one will definitely stay in your mind. So yeah, not nice at all. But once I proved myself and I had a couple of viral videos, then the love from the Jamaican fans came flooding in.
I can imagine Jamaica are always keen to support their athletes, and it seems like such a nation where someone does well, and it's like, yes, this is it just you feel the vibe, even if you have no connection to Jamaica, you don't even maybe know the athlete, but you see the response online from communities. Like it just seems incredible, the support that the country gets to give to their athletes. And what you said about there's an idea that athletes that do move countries from, like yourself, maybe from England to Jamaica or from somewhere else to somewhere else, there's often an idea that the athlete only does that because they're not good enough. And I guess I wanted to get a bit more of your thoughts on that topic, because that clearly isn't the case for everyone. And it might be for some people that they might struggle to make a team selection, but they're eligible to compete for another country. Why not? Why
Yeah.
stop them?
Exactly. Just to go back to your other point as well, with Jamaica and representation, where it is such a small nation and it's not got the most money, they are so proud when you are just representing them, and that was amazing. I think obviously coming from the system where sort of medals equaled money at the time, especially with UK sport, and then to come into Jamaica where it was like they just are so proud and happy that you're representing them on this world or Olympic stage. That was an amazing feeling. And yeah, to answer your next question, yeah, I've seen that, especially I think sometimes when USA gymnasts move to a different country, because yeah, there's obviously a huge incredible system of gymnastics in America, and it's so competitive. And then when someone does move to another country, like they have every right, and it really infuriates me when I see people commenting saying negative things about them and that they're taking opportunities from local gymnasts, and that is not the case, because oftentimes the gymnast that's moved to this country that's probably smaller and has got less money and not as an established kind of program, they're going to boost that program. The gymnasts that were born and bred in that country, they're maybe not quite good enough yet to get to these world and Olympic stages. So for those gymnasts that move and represent that country at an Olympic level, then all they're doing is boosting that sport. They're getting eyes on that sport, they're hopefully getting more money on that in that sport for that country. So I think, yeah, it should never be looked at as a negative, it's a positive, and they're going to bring these local gymnasts up with them. So yeah, it really does infuriate me when I see that. Yeah, and I mean, for me, I was lucky, like I said, that I got to compete as a guest at British Championships and English Championships, and I think it was in about 2019, I think, which was the year which I qualified for the Tokyo Olympics, and I was obviously trying to be at my best at that point, and I was still sort of, I think I got the highest score on beam at the English Championships, and I was still sort of up there in the all-around as well, so that to me was quite telling that I was kind of still up there in the ranks in Great Britain, but choosing to compete for Jamaica.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I found it quite interesting to hear just how passionate you are about the topic because it's obviously something that most people will never personally experience. And so, having made that move yourself and seeing others maybe get criticized for it, particularly US gymnasts that you probably know some of them quite well from your time at college or just time competing in the same sort of areas, that's quite interesting to hear sort of your perspective on it. I guess as well with Jamaica, obviously a big sport for them is track and field. And so, what was it like for you representing a country in a sport that isn't their main sport at all, really?
Yeah, there was an event that I did, which was called the Superstars of Gymnastics, and it wasn't a formal gymnastics competition. You were allowed to kind of, they wanted you to basically get the audience engaged and do whatever it took to get the audience just loving your performance. And then the judges were Simone, her coach, I think it was Amy Tinker and Max Whitlock, and they were kind of judging like Strictly Come Dancing with the numbers. And that for me was just like my bread and butter. I love audience interaction. I love trying to get everyone cheering and enjoying my performance. So I was representing Jamaica during that, and I had a flag, and I had a flag on the back of my leotard. And after my performances, I was running with the flag, and yeah, it was just amazing. And a couple of those performances did quite well online. And after that, the response that I was getting from the Jamaicans, and because I was showing off my personality and it wasn't following the exact gymnastics rules, and I was getting to show a bit of just fun, really, I think they really saw me as a true Jamaican at that point, because that is, like I said, what Jamaican athletes are all about. So yeah, that for me was incredible and really kind of just set the tone for me representing them, and yeah, definitely got me some fans.
I love that because I guess yeah, when we do think of like our favorite Jamaican athletes, it often is because of their personality and what they bring to their sport, and not just solely because of their performance. And so it makes sense that after those sort of videos went viral, that a lot more support from the country sort of came towards you. That's really lovely. Um, but I also wanted to touch on a bit more of your motivations to maybe choose to support to represent Jamaica over maybe Poland or Great Britain, or to just not compete at all. You mentioned obviously you thought, oh, maybe I could still keep going with it, but was there any sort of personal reasons in relation to sort of your family's heritage that sort of drove you to maybe want to sort of represent that side of you as well?
So to begin with, it was purely logistical. Like I mentioned, it was too difficult to represent Great Britain, and I wanted to represent Jamaica over Poland because I felt like I fit in the athletic mould, so to speak. But then as I kind of got into it, and I realised I was sort of making history with the rest of the gymnasts that were just at the beginning stages of representing Jamaica, and we were inspiring so many gymnasts back in Jamaica, that was something that I then became quite determined to make sure that we did a good job of, and made sure that we were representing them in the best way possible. And when they opened their national centre, I made the effort to go over there and be a part of that, and just to always try to just push the message and do whatever I can to further the sport in the country and keep inspiring the young local Jamaicans. And then as well as that, my husband's also half Jamaican, and he's always had a keen interest in Black history. And I haven't always been a history buff by any means, but along with his interest in it, and then obviously me representing Jamaica, it just all became more interesting to me and just made me even more proud to represent Jamaica, kind of learning about the history and also going to Ghana and learning about the slave castles and sort of the journey that a lot of my ancestors probably made to get to Jamaica. And I mean, similar to my great grandma being in Auschwitz, it just thinking that what my ancestors went through just makes me even more proud to represent Jamaica.
I think that's beautiful because, like you said, like you've had two sides of your family have both gone through like horrific times throughout history, and sort of you've been able to come through and represent, I guess, all three sides, like being born in Britain but also having Jamaican and Polish heritage. It's a really beautiful combination being able to represent all of that in you, really. And I thought it's quite interesting that your husband was also sort of a factor in you wanting to maybe learn more about sort of Jamaican history, and you've got a newborn, a new baby now as well, and I guess probably thinking a bit ahead, but in the future, if he was to have an interest in sport, what would your thoughts be on who he might want to represent?
Do you know what? I was having that conversation the other day with someone. Obviously, it'd be completely up to him, and I'll just support and help as much as I can. Yeah, we obviously do live in Great Britain still, so that might be the natural progression of things. But depending on the sport as well, it might be that he aspires to be an athlete and run for Jamaica, which would be, probably more difficult than representing Great Britain. It's definitely going to be up to him, and if he likes sports and what sport that might be. But I'll be his biggest fan regardless.
I love that. And I guess, yeah, it's almost nice for him to have that option of he could maybe grow up in Great Britain and, like yourself, go through some of the pathways and then go, actually, you know what? I want to represent Jamaica for whatever those reasons may be. That's a really lovely option, I think, for him to have, like you did yourself. And I wanted to go back a little bit to the moments that you transitioned to. You are now representing Jamaica. Where was it that you were based? Were you still based at sort of UCLA in and around the campus? And did you ever get to train much in Jamaica, and what were the sort of facilities like there?
Yeah, so to begin with, I was still at UCLA, and that was the main place I was training, and then I'd come home in summer and train at my club, which is Heathrow. But we would always go out to Jamaica sort of as a team, which was really exciting because our whole of our Jamaican team, which I mean was like six of us at the time, three boys, three girls, we'd go out there and meet all the younger gymnasts. And there was sort of one club at the time and very basic equipment. And then they opened the national facility in I think it was 2019. So I was there at the opening, and then that is definitely a bigger facility. But from what I've been used to and blessed with training on most of my life, it still doesn't quite compare to that. So I've done a couple of like display moves there, but I wouldn't be able to do my proper routines by any means. So yeah, it's an expensive sport to have a gym club that's state of the art and got all the modern equipment in is really, really expensive. So they don't quite have the funds for that, but hopefully if we keep progressing, then one day they'll have a really amazing gym like the ones that we've got here in Great Britain.
Yeah, and of course you need athletes like yourself to represent the country to sort of influence more young athletes maybe wanting to take up the sports. They can justify spending the money on the facilities, and it's sort of a big cycle that hopefully you'll have been a really good part of and sort of influencing more athletes coming through. And looking at your time then going towards representing Jamaica at the Olympics, it was obviously a tough Olympics, but do you want to sort of explain to the listeners who maybe don't know your story the sort of build up to those Olympics and what happened?
Yeah, so we had the 2015 Worlds, which was the first time I represented Jamaica, and I qualified to the Olympic test event, which was the final stage for the Olympics, and almost all of the athletes that do the test event do qualify, so it was almost like a done deal at that point. But there was another gymnast that had been competing for Jamaica a little bit longer, so they let her take that spot. So that was quite hard to take at the time, especially after being the reserve for Great Britain 3 years before that. So to come that close twice in a row, and obviously Olympic cycles being 4 years apart, it's a long time to think of shall you go for the next one. So I then carried on with my UCLA career, which was incredible. Again, just absolutely loving the sport because of UCLA and the gymnastics system in the NCAA. And then was to and fro with the idea, but I thought actually I'm going to graduate and I'm going to retire from gymnastics, move back home and start my life. And I'm back home for about a year and a half, and there was just this random week where loads of people were asking me if I was going to start gymnastics again. And I was like, I haven't done gymnastics in a year and a half. I don't know why all these people are asking me this, but it got the cogs turning a bit, and I was like, do I want to? Do I want to go for another Olympics? Like, third time lucky, is that going to happen? We'll see. So I really thought about it, spoke to sort of family and friends. I wasn't even living near my gymnastics club at the time, so I was going to have to move, and it was a big deal. But spoke to my coaches, and they were very supportive, so moved to the other side of London and thought, let's just give it a go. And again, I actually thought, let me go for Commonwealth Games first, same as 2015. But in 2015, they decided to just take one male gymnast to Commonwealth Games, and obviously, having been retired, I couldn't really say you need to take me at that point. So then I was like, okay, I need to decide, am I going to go for another Olympics? But at that time, it was quite difficult to swallow your pride and think, obviously, you can go for it, but you again might come as close as I did the last two cycles and not go. Can I take that heartbreak again? Obviously, everyone's got that slight fear of failure, and it's a tough sport to train day in, day out, and now being an adult, having bills to pay, can I balance that with work? So it really was a bit of a decision to make, but I thought, you know what, I don't want to live life and think, what if? So if I go for it, and if I don't make it again, then at least I've tried and I can't have any regrets. So that's exactly what I did. I trained for it, and I really just put my all into it. I hadn't been a big believer in vision boards or anything like that before, but I wrote a vision board, and sort of all my goals that year were coming true. So then I really got into it and was rewriting the goal of qualifying for the Olympics in 2019 at the World Championships. And I was so nervous for that competition, and I was just putting all that pressure on myself as an individual. It wasn't a team that we were qualifying because we didn't have enough gymnasts. So it was knowing that you can do it, and I think also having come so close twice before and it being that childhood dream. My husband, fiance at the time, came to Germany where the World Championships was the night before the qualifying competition and said, how are you feeling? And I just burst into tears. I was so nervous, and I was always someone that quite enjoyed competitions, obviously got nervous, but I was literally the most anxious and nervous I'd ever been. I think just because I really did want it that much, but yeah, you almost don't want to let yourself down. So luckily had a great competition and qualified to the 2020 Olympics, and that was definitely one of the proudest moments to qualify. And then comes COVID, so obviously the Olympics gets postponed by a year, and we're training at home, doing Zooms and all of that, so having to get your routines back from literally square one, so that was quite difficult, but got back up to that level, and off we went to Tokyo with our COVID test results and masks and all of that. And when I was there, unfortunately I tore my ACL, but at this point I'm out there at COVID, they can't have anyone else to replace me because of the way that you qualify, and I was like, no, come on, Jamaica's only ever had one gymnast compete at the Olympics, I'm going to be the second one. I want to keep that ball rolling and keep the history of Jamaican gymnastics going at these Olympic Games, and also for myself to make my childhood dream come true. So I was determined to compete no matter what. So I just ended up doing a few skills on the bars and getting a score on the board and becoming an Olympian officially in my own way.
Yeah, it's maybe not the most traditional way, but it still gives you that title, and it's the thing that no one can take that from you, and the hard work you put into it. It didn't invalidate any of your journey and work that you put into that moment, and you still get to say that you're an Olympian, you achieved that dream. Maybe not how you would have dreamt it going, but it was still ticked off. And I think that's beautiful that actually wanting to be the second Jamaican gymnast at the Olympics was part of that as well, and sort of keep the idea of keeping the ball rolling. And hopefully that we'll be doing that. And I guess looking at young Jamaicans now, have you seen a change in how many gymnasts there are in the country? Do you think there's more coming through the sport now?
Yeah, definitely. There's one gymnast that I helped to get a scholarship in America, so she is called Jamila Duffus, and she's a born and bred Jamaican gymnast, lives there, trained there, and she's on a scholarship in America, college, so that's absolutely incredible, and she's the first one to kind of train in Jamaica and earn a scholarship, so I was really proud of her, and yeah, she's still at college now, so go and support her. And then yeah, in terms of other gymnasts that are representing Jamaica, we've still got a lot that compete for Jamaica that live in Canada and the USA and Great Britain, but again, like we've said, that still just continues to build the profile and yeah, just to get the eyes on Jamaican gymnastics and help those homegrown gymnasts, and they've definitely got more of a structure now, they've got their national facility, so yeah, it is really progressing.
And looking forwards, as we're getting more Jamaican gymnasts coming through the ranks, what would you like to see in 5 or 10 years' time in I guess, the state of Jamaican gymnastics, sort of national facilities or performances on the international stage? What would you love to see for the programme?
Yeah, I would love to see, like you said, definitely a state of the art facility at some point. It's definitely a hard one, as I mentioned, it's so expensive. It's not, yeah, it's just the equipment is so expensive in gymnastics, and you need the space and everything like that. But hopefully, maybe in the 5 to 10 years that you mentioned, we can get a facility, because I think that's the starting point. Once you've got the facility, then you can train the gymnasts up to that level. There's definitely the talent. I mean, Jamaicans are naturally athletic, and they can't all do athletics, track and field. So yeah, get more of them in the gym, and yeah, and then hopefully we'll see them on those podiums in the years to come, because it has to start from the equipment and the facilities, because you've got to level the playing field somewhere, you know. If you've got gymnasts in one country competing against gymnasts from another country that have completely different facilities and even levels of coaching, making sure that the coaches are qualified and trained properly, and you've got judges that know what they're doing that can also advise the gymnasts. So it's just kind of just trying to catch up with lots of other countries that have had the structures in place for years.
That's amazing. And I wanted to ask you one final question to sort of summarize and sort of close off the episode. If you could sort of say one thing to athletes who are considering moving, like maybe even young children who sort of maybe will have that option in the future, but are considering from moving from representing their birth country to a country of their heritage, whether that be just from one side or both sides, but are maybe worried about what other people might think, what would be your message to someone who's maybe considering that or has that as an option?
I like how you worded the question, because I think there's two different conversations. If it's a country of your heritage, like it was in my case of many people, then I think that you have absolutely every right and you should explore those opportunities and do what's best for you. I think it's a different conversation if you're going to a country that you don't have heritage from and you're able to be paid by that country to represent them. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I do think it's a different conversation. But I think if you're considering it, then definitely look into your options. I think it is a difficult decision when the countries are quite different in terms of what they can offer or infrastructure. So you've got to weigh up the pros and cons for you personally. If you're someone that actually maybe is always sort of reserved, not quite making the team in their country, and you want to go and represent another country of your heritage, you have every right. It doesn't mean you're not good enough for the country that you might be born and raised in, but it just means that you're lucky enough to be of mixed heritage and you're lucky enough to have those options, so go and explore them. And I think it can be difficult being mixed race at times, so why shouldn't there be some positives to it that you get options? So yeah, definitely do what's going to work for you and be proud, and if you can represent more than one, why not?
That's such a beautiful message. I absolutely think that's a perfect way to end the podcast. And hopefully, we'll give anyone listening something to think on, even whether it's just maybe how they view athletes that have made that change or considering making that change, or maybe they themselves are someone who has considered it previously or might in the future. So I want to say thank you very much, Danusia, for joining me and for everyone listening for getting sidetracked with us. I will see you all in the next episode. Thank you. Bye.